Beholders' Tales. Book of the Dark. Tale of the Forgotten. The air in the bustling market of Oakhaven always hummed with a vibrant, chaotic energy. Merchants hawked their wares, children chased pigeons, and the scent of baking bread mingled with the earthy aroma of fresh produce. It was a symphony of life, a tapestry woven from countless threads of interaction and memory. And in the midst of it all, there was Roland, a man woven from a different, fraying thread, a thread that was constantly being snipped away. He approached a fruit stall, his hand extending a silver coin for a plump, crimson apple. The vendor, a portly woman with flour dusting her apron, smiled warmly. "A fine choice, sir. Fresh from the orchards this morn." Roland smiled back, a genuine, kind smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. He grasped the apple, felt its cool skin against his palm. He lifted it, ready to thank her. Then her eyes unfocused. Her smile faltered, replaced by a slight frown of confusion. She blinked, looking past him, then around the empty space where he had stood moments before. "Next in line," she called, her voice sharp with impatience. Roland stood there, the apple still in his hand, the coin still clutched in the other. He had not moved, not breathed, yet he was gone. To her he had never been there. The thread had snapped. He placed the apple gently back in the basket, the coin on the counter. No one saw him do it. The vendor seemed to notice neither the reappearing apple nor the stray coin. Her gaze was already on the next customer, a scowling man who pushed past the invisible Roland with a grunt. This was Roland's curse, a cruel, insidious thing that stole not his visibility, but his very existence from the minds of others. He was a phantom of memory, a whisper that died on the wind before it could be heard. People saw him, interacted with him, even spoke his name, but moments later, or sometimes even in the middle of a sentence, their minds would wipe him clean, as if he were a fleeting dream, too ephemeral to grasp. He left no imprint, no echo, no mark on the world save for the fleeting, unremembered moments he occupied. It was a dark, lonely existence, made all the more poignant by Roland's nature. He was a kind man, gentle and compassionate, with a heart that ached at the sight of misfortune. He yearned to connect, to be seen, to be remembered. In the beginning there was a fragile hope, a desperate, irrational belief that perhaps, if he did enough good, if his actions were grand enough, righteous enough, the curse would break. Surely the universe would acknowledge true selfless kindness? His first act of intentional heroism came swiftly. He was passing by the Blacklock Falls, a dangerous, churning torrent that fed the river. A small child, no older than 5, was playing precariously close to the edge, oblivious to the slick moss and treacherous currents. Before Roland could even think, he lunged, pulling the child back from the brink just as a loose stone crumbled underfoot. The child cried out, startled. Roland knelt, trying to comfort the terrified boy. "Are you all right, little one?" he murmured, his voice gentle. The child looked at him, tears streaming down his face, then blinked. His eyes darted around, confused. He looked at Roland's outstretched hand, then back at the river, then with a sob, scrambled away, darting into the arms of his mother who had rushed over, frantic, her face pale. "Oh, my baby. What happened? You were so close," she cried, clutching him. The child whimpered, pointing vaguely towards the falls. The mother looked, saw nothing but the rushing water. "Did you fall, sweetie? How did you get back?" She searched the area, her eyes sweeping over where Roland still knelt, invisible to her panicked gaze. "It must have been a miracle," she breathed, pulling her son away. Roland watched them go, a familiar pang in his chest. No thanks, no recognition. But the child was safe. A faint, bittersweet warmth bloomed in his chest. Perhaps the miracle was him, even if no one knew it. Maybe the accumulation of these miracles would chip away at the curse. He began to devote himself wholly to this silent crusade. He became a ghost of good deeds, drifting through the shadows of cities and the quiet paths of the countryside. He rescued lost travelers from treacherous woods, meticulously clearing paths and leaving subtle markers. He would spend hours repairing broken tools left carelessly in fields, or mending fences that had fallen into disrepair, only for the owners to discover them fixed, mystified. He would stealthily place food and warm blankets at the doors of the destitute in the dead of night, then melt away before dawn. Once he witnessed a band of thieves attempting to raid a merchant's wagon. Roland, moving like a wraith, subtly tripped the lead thief, tangled another's feet in their own rope, and disarmed a third, all while remaining unseen, unremembered. The thieves, bewildered and frustrated, thought the wagon was cursed and fled in disarray. The merchant, waking, found his goods intact and attributed it to a sudden bout of clumsiness among the culprits. Roland watched from a darkened alley, a deep sigh escaping his lips. He had ensured no harm came, but his effort was lost. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years. Roland aged, lines etching themselves around his tired eyes, his hair beginning to gray at the temples. His hope, once a vibrant flame, had dwindled to a flickering ember. He no longer expected thanks or even a fleeting acknowledgement. He simply did what his kind heart compelled him to do, an automaton of benevolence. The loneliness was a constant, crushing weight, a silent scream that no one would ever hear. Then came the turning point, the bitter draught that extinguished the last embers of his spirit. A devastating fire erupted in the village of Etheria, sparked by a blacksmith's forge. The wooden homes ignited like kindling and panic seized the villagers. Roland, passing nearby, rushed into the inferno. He risked his unremembered life again and again, dragging unconscious bodies from collapsed homes, guiding terrified families through smoke-filled streets, dousing flames with buckets of water he tirelessly hauled from the well. He worked with a frantic, desperate energy, his face blackened by soot, his lungs burning with smoke. When the last embers finally died down, and the sun began to rise on a smoldering, weeping village, Roland collapsed, exhausted, against a charred wall. He watched as the villagers, haggard and tear-streaked, began to emerge from their temporary shelters. Then a voice boomed. "Villagers of Etheria, gather." It was Mayor Theron, a portly, self-important man known more for his speeches than his deeds. He stood amidst the debris, his face smudged, his clothes slightly singed, from standing too close to the edge of the blaze. Roland knew, not from fighting it. "We have endured a great tragedy," Theron declared, his voice thick with false emotion. "But we persevered. Thanks to the valiant efforts of our own townsfolk, under my meticulous direction, we have saved what little remains." He puffed out his chest. "I personally organized the bucket lines. I directed the flow of water. I rallied the brave men and women who risked their lives." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. "Thank you, Mayor Theron," someone shouted. Others cheered, their gratitude palpable. They clasped Theron's hand, patted his back, hailed him as a hero. Roland watched, his eyes burning but not from the smoke. His limbs ached from the impossible task of saving lives, many of which now cheered their false savior. Not only was he forgotten, but his selfless, heroic deeds were being stolen, attributed to a man who had done nothing but observe and claim. The invisible man was now also the uncredited man. This pattern, once a singular, shocking event, began to repeat itself with chilling regularity. Roland would meticulously track down a lost caravan, only for a dashing, charismatic rogue named Lysander to miraculously discover it and claim a hefty reward. He would discreetly expose a corrupt official, providing irrefutable proof, only for a shrewd, ambitious clerk to uncover the scandal and ascend to power. He averted a localized plague by tirelessly cleaning contaminated water sources and clearing diseased animals, yet the local alchemist, Ilara, was lauded as a savior for her miraculous new tonic. Each stolen credit was a dagger to Roland's heart. He was not just unseen. He was a tool, a means to an end for others' glory. The world was not blind to his kindness. It merely attributed it to others or to luck, or to divine intervention. His hope curdled into a bitter despair. He still found himself intervening, helping, doing good, but the joy was gone. The purpose was gone. It was merely habit, an instinct born of his inherent compassion, now performed by a hollow man. Weeks stretched into months, months into years, each one heavier than the last. Roland was gaunt, his eyes holding an ancient weariness. He was no longer trying to break the curse. He was simply existing within it, a ghost in a world that refused to acknowledge his haunting presence. He saw a child playing near a rushing river, the same river that fed Blacklock Falls. The child slipped. Without hesitation, Roland plunged in, the cold current shocking him to the bone. He pulled the child to the bank, pushing him onto the muddy grass. The child coughed, sputtering water. Roland leaned over him, his heart pounding. Then the child's mother arrived, her face contorted in terror. She saw her child, soaked and gasping on the riverbank. She looked around frantically, searching for an explanation, for a rescuer. Her eyes swept over Roland, utterly blind to him. "My baby. How did you get out?" "Oh, thank the heavens." "A miracle," she cried, scooping up her child and hurrying away, calling no name, remembering no face. Roland stood there, dripping wet, the cold seeping into his bones, but it was nothing compared to the chill in his soul. He looked at his hands, rough and scarred from years of unacknowledged toil. What was the purpose? What was the point of existence if it left no mark, no echo, no memory? He was less than a shadow at least acknowledged the presence of light. He was nothing. He walked away from the river, not towards a village or a road, but towards the desolate, forgotten places. Towards the ancient, gnarled woods where the trees grew too thick for light to penetrate, towards the craggy, windswept peaks where only the keenest eagles dared to nest. He walked until the sounds of humanity faded to nothing, until the air grew thin and cold, until he found a place that was as forgotten as he was. It was a jagged cliff overlooking a churning gray sea, where the wind shrieked like a banshee and the waves crashed with relentless fury against the rocks below. No one came here. No one would ever come here. It was the perfect place for a man who had never truly been anywhere. Roland stood at the edge, the wind tearing at his threadbare clothes, whipping his graying hair about his face. He looked out at the vast, indifferent ocean, its depths mirroring the emptiness he felt within. There was no grand speech, no final plea to an uncaring sky. There was only silence, profound and absolute. He closed his eyes. The curse had ensured his existence was a whisper, a breath, a fleeting moment of kindness that vanished without a trace. It would ensure his end was the same. A ripple on the wind, a forgotten splash in the eternal waters. And no one shed a tear, for no one remembered a name. End of the tale. Those who are unseen are often those who suffer most.